Hello everyone! For those of you who have never seen +1, -2 in the context of cycling safety, here's a quick rundown. Essentially, I'm going to ride my bike from downtown Traverse City, Michigan, all the way to Home Depot. The ride is around 10 kilometers in total. During this ride, I'm going to use the +1, -2 scoring system to rate the experience. If I encounter something that makes cycling feel safe and viable as a commuting option, I'll add 1 point. If something inconveniences my ride, I'll subtract 2 points. If you have any complaints for me, I'll probably talk about them at the end of the video, so just skip to the end if you're a loser. Let's get started.
We start off in a bike lane. I'd say that's a good start. Problem being, it was put here back in the 90s, so it's not really the greatest. The risk of a car door opening in my face is way too high, and also it's a bit too narrow. There's covered bike parking off to my left, and a parking space was replaced with bike parking on my right. We're now entering the Traverse Area Recreation Trails, or just TART trails. The TART trail is normally just used for recreation, but it can sometimes be used for transportation, which is nice. But the pavement quality tends to be a little... yeah. Stop signs for cyclists are dumb. The absolute maximum a cyclist should have to deal with is a yield sign. I'll get a little more into why I hate stop signs for cyclists later, so just keep watching. This driver went out of her way to stop for me, at the expense of her tires. Speed bump or crosswalk? Your choice, Traverse City. Up ahead is the Woodmere and 8th intersection, and it's the only pedestrian scramble in Traverse City. Here's a sample of me actually using it. All traffic lights turn red, and some little signs that say no turn on red also turn on, which is really awesome. Now we're on 8th Street. This is the best infrastructure of the ride. 8th Street used to be a 4-lane stroad, but when it was due for resurfacing in 2019, they converted it to an arterial street. If you don't know what a stroad is, I'll link a video by Not Just Bikes here. I really like riding here because these bike lanes are amazing. They're some of the safest bike lanes in Michigan. They're raised and protected by a buffer. These crosswalks are great too. They're level with the street, so pedestrians don't have to ramp down to the road to cross. This is great for 2 reasons. People with disabilities can cross more easily, and the lifespan of the crossing is significantly longer. I find that ground settlement can degrade the quality of normal crosswalks very easily. These are rapid flashing beacons. They're a controversial talking point among activists because drivers don't obey them, but every time I've used them, drivers stop instantly. I think it comes down to the design of the road. Nobody is stopping for a rapid flashing beacon on a 4-lane stroad. The bike parking for this business has 3 bikes in it. I wouldn't say that conveniences me in any way, but it does show that when you build good cycling infrastructure, people will use it. We're back on the TART trail. This time it's not running parallel to any roads, which makes it quieter. Again, the TART trail's primary use is recreation, but this part almost acts as a shortcut for people crossing town by bike. Yeesh, this pavement is really bumpy. I've already talked about it though, so I'm not going to change the points. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the wayfinding for the TART trail is actually pretty good. Unfortunately, it still confused me, so I had to look at Google Maps to continue. Nothing to add here, I just thought this view looked pretty nice. It would look nicer if my camera wasn't shaking. We're now far enough away from cars that the only sounds you can hear are nature and my kickstand scraping against my tire. A water fountain is provided along the trail, which is convenient because I forgot to fill up my water bottle.
Damn it doesn't work. Well, I was gonna give it a +1, but I guess I can't now.
These trees provide adequate shade during the summer. It's a small detail, but definitely very important. Unfortunately, we're dumped on a street with no sidewalks here, but thankfully the traffic volume isn't too high, so I don't have to worry too much. Once we get past this intersection, however, it's a whole different story. This is 14th Street, and it's a polar opposite to 8th Street. Both streets are minor arterials, but 14th is noticeably more car-centric. No level mid-block crossings, no pedestrian refuge islands, and not even a bike lane. Thankfully, it is legal to ride on the sidewalk in Michigan. Allowing bikes on sidewalks is a great way to boost cycling networks, but it's only effective if the sidewalks are wide enough. And this sidewalk is anything but wide. Is it just me, or do drivers get significantly less patient with cyclists in more car-centric areas? Because I felt pretty uncomfortable in that situation. An even bigger middle finger to me is this driver who's over the crosswalk with 2 hands on her phone. This guy is jaywalking within 1 block of a signalized crosswalk. Probably because the walk sign takes too long, but patience is key in my opinion. Until you're run over by a car doing a right on red. This is our first encounter with an actual Strode. Thankfully, I do get a bit of grade separation, so it's not nearly as loud as it would be if I was right next to the cars. Unfortunately, this is where most of the suburban development starts, so the amount of distance I have to travel to get between businesses is much longer. Of course, land use isn't really the topic of this video, but it definitely plays a factor in cycling safety. There are not enough shade trees along this path. I gave 8th Street a pass because it's new, but Division has no excuse. To my knowledge, this path has been here for like 23 years. There has been plenty of time for shade trees to grow here. One thing I do like about this path is that instead of opting for stop signs, it opts for yield signs. This seems much more reasonable. It does have a few stop signs though. Yeah, remember what I was saying about this path being grade separated and far away from the cars? Well, it isn't now, and it's really freaking loud. This metal post is a bus stop. These bus stops are common in the US, and they're also a major issue with public transit here. In 2018, Beta, our local transit authority, opened the free Bayline bus route, which runs along most hotels every 15 minutes. One of the main purposes of Bayline is getting tourists out of cars during the Cherry Festival, but there's one major flaw. Nobody will choose to ride the bus if they have to stand in the summer sun next to a signpost for 15 plus minutes. There's a reason bus rapid transit systems have nice bus stops. They wouldn't have any ridership otherwise. Another important thing I haven't mentioned is street lighting. Of course, it doesn't affect me on this ride because it's daytime, but street lighting is definitely very important if you're going to use cycling as transportation. So after finishing this video, I went back at night to record this. I don't know why, but I was honestly expecting street lighting to be okay. Clearly, I was extremely wrong. Ooh, a big stop sign for the Chick-fil-A. Don't I feel special? I don't even think this is supposed to be a sidewalk, but it's awful. Oh, wonderful. Now we're dumped in a mall parking lot. Also, look at how empty this parking lot is. I don't even think it fills up during Black Friday. Due to modern accessibility requirements, this new Starbucks had to build a sidewalk, but they don't really help if there's no incentive to build sidewalks where businesses already exist. I have to cross the street here, and of course I don't get a sidewalk.
Y'all, check out this old ass bag button. Proper rubber and everything. Ooh. Probably older than my dad, but at least it works, so I'm not complaining.
Yeesh, this walk sign is taking forever. Finally, I get a walk sign. And of course, there's no sidewalk on the other side. Guess I can't expect too much. You can see someone else's bike tracks here, so clearly I wasn't alone. We made it to Home Depot alive! Now to find the bike parking. Except there is none. Hey, some bike parking. Americans usually only see cycling as a tool for sport and recreation. I find this unfortunate because bikes are literally the solution to traffic. So many of the average American's trips could easily be replaced by a bike. If you've been in the urban planning circle for a while, you've probably heard this quote: "The only solution to traffic is viable alternatives to driving." It's always been this way, and planners have known this for decades. The key word here is viable. Cycling to Home Depot was definitely possible as shown by this video, but it isn't viable. Viable doesn't mean minimum effort to make cycling safe. A disconnected excuse of a network full of door-zoned bike lanes isn't viable. Thin sidewalks on unsafe streets isn't viable. Sharing the road isn't viable. Inconveniently long wait times at crosswalks isn't viable. Removing bike lanes from a high-traffic street because some resident complained about parking isn't viable. Why would you even want to park here? There's too much traffic for... It doesn't matter. Nobody is going to choose to bike for actual transportation if this is what they have to contend with. What we need is viable cycling infrastructure. Viable means safe streets to cycle on. Viable means protection from cars at dangerous intersections. Viable means you're never more than a block away from a safe, protected bike lane. Viable means you don't have to go far to find a signalized crosswalk, and when you do, it doesn't take so long to get a walk sign. Viable means you can trust your kids won't die if they go to school by bike. Unfortunately, providing viable alternatives to driving is made challenging by stigma. It's all too common everywhere to see people complaining about nobody using brand new bike lanes in their city and how they're a complete waste of money. This is the kind of bike lane they're complaining about, by the way. One of the more significant complaints I see here in Traverse is that cyclists roll through stop signs and blame others when they're injured. Apparently, cyclists are incapable of looking behind them to make sure they aren't aligned with cars that could hit them before irresponsibly rolling through a stop sign. Here's an interaction between me and a right-turning driver. I have a yield sign coming up, so I look behind me and notice a driver in the right lane. I slow down in case they're turning right, and continue when it's safe to do so. Here's the same interaction at another crossing. I look behind me, there's a driver next to me in the right lane, I slow down, continue when it's safe. Also, this whole stop sign argument is BS because drivers do the same thing. Here's one example. And here's another. And another. The cyclist blow the stop sign. Now, I'm sure fellow Traverse City viewers are complaining about the route I chose, and I absolutely understand. Home Depot isn't the only hardware store in town. If you actually want to go to the hardware store on a bike, there are absolutely safer and more reasonable options. Ace Hardware is right downtown, and Deweese is over on the east side. Even Lowe's, while not as pleasant as the other two, is more accessible than Home Depot. Could use some wider sidewalks, though. But this argument isn't as solid as you think. Home Depot isn't the only store in this strip mall. There's cheap food, cheap groceries, pet supplies. Right across the road is the mall. All of these places are unreasonably inaccessible to anyone outside of a car. And if you think about it, it's kind of messed up that in order to get food for cheap, you need to drive an expensive hunk of metal around. Monthly payments, registration fees, license fees, gas, all so you can, quote-unquote, spend less on food. And no, there aren't any other alternatives. The only other Burger King in town is also along a 4-lane road. For anyone watching, I strongly encourage you to try +1 -2 as well. Test your own city, see if it gets a better score. It's pretty interesting to ride a bike in places where usually you're protected by a soundproof metal cage. Just don't get yourself killed. And with that, I'm going to end this video. Thank you everyone for watching. If you want to get this video out there, hit that like button, and I hope your day goes wonderful.